Okay. Very good morning to you, and thank you so much for keeping it to NBS Television. This is the Morning Breeze, your most authoritative morning current affairs show. We always bring you the latest of what's happening in and around the country, but also elsewhere in the world. It's a Friday, and when it gets to a Friday, I know that I am going to have a team of journalists making sense of some of the stories that have made headlines during this week. Of course, we're still all about mergers. Merge this, collapse this, get it back. No, this one should stay, and all that kind of conversation. But there is also a lot of words surrounding the mergers, the intentions of keeping some and, taking back the others. But also, have we lost the bigger picture of the fact that it's not just about merging government agencies and authorities, but reducing the government expenditure? That is the biggest conversation. And have we lost also the merger conversation and the earlier intention into, issues of personal attacks, so and so should go, so and so should stay? That is on one side. But also, this week has been a week of talking about our infrastructure. And here we are. We welcome to the rains. And everyone is enjoying the beauty of the potholes in the city. What could be the lasting solution? This is not the first time we're talking about the pothole city. That and much more is what we'll be delving into. Allow me get you onto my panel. And of course, they always say ladies first unless when there is danger. I have Sheila Kamara. All right, sitting next to me, we have our resident chairs on the Media Roundtable. A very good morning to you, Sheila, and always a pleasure having you.
Good morning, Mildred, and good morning to my fellow panelists. I'm so happy always to be on NBS Morning Breeze, and it's a time to laugh about some of the things we talk about here.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to. And Joel Mokisa, a very good morning to you. But I want to say congratulations. You didn't share the pictures on the graduation, but we know that with the latest graduation, you graduated with the LOP. We expected selfies across because this is a social media era. But congratulations to you, and thank you so much for making time.
Thank you so much, Mildred, and thank you so much, viewers. Good morning. The pleasure is all mine.
Oh, the ploy was for you not to invite us for the party.
No, there was no
You don't
party.
share,
No.
and you don't invite us for a party.
There was no party.
Okay, thank you.
You know this economy. There was no-
Economy.
I gave him. Joseph Sabiti, a senior journalist, once one, always one, because you just transition how your journalism is being done. And a press secretary to the Speaker of the Republic of Uganda, a very good morning to you, and thank you for sparing your time.
Good morning, and good morning to my colleagues here. Always a pleasure taking this seat in this building where our journey in journalism started very many years ago. These days I'd be wondering,
This very side, actually.
when I am talking to my daughters, I'd be telling them that I worked at WBS, and then they ask me, what is WBS? So yeah, that's history. I've had conversations with Joel about history and its twists and who determines how it is written. But also this morning, I think I am excited, looking forward to the Uganda Matters Day celebrations this year. The Catholic Diocese of Nebi is animating.
I almost asked myself why you are actually excited.
Yeah, so we want to go and show Ugandans the real touch from Nebi Diocese. I want, probably after here, I will pass Chairman's basket and that will make a contribution to support the team led by now Archbishop-elect Bishop Raphael Wokorach Pomony. The rains are here. Where I come from, you can't move.
Joseph has started speaking like politicians.
No.
Yeah, you know.
Whether you're a politician or not.
But also he's representative of the son of the soil. Eh?
No.
Typically.
Here's the point, Mildred. Where I come from, when it rains, if you're driving, you must carry a spanner for removing the tires. People help you carry the car to a better place, and then you move.
You can
And
so,
the spade and the hoe.
And it's an economic activity now. People put spades and hoes on the road. You get stuck, 30,000, they move you. So when you people are talking about the city, I invite you to come to the part of the country where I come from.
We'll be delving deeper into that. Of course, as we were at it, we were joined by Nelson Bwire. You know him as Kapo. And Nelson, good morning.
Good morning, Mildred.
And Why are you greeting me cheekily? You are smart.
You are the one who greeted me first. So,
And why is Joseph? Ask why Joseph is laughing.
I am implying with the same energy.
Journalist code, dress code.
I love it. I love it. You are smashingly smart.
Thank you. Thank
You should have seen him yesterday.
Oh, no.
So it's now become a trend.
I think he bought new suits.
It doesn't matter, Nelson. Don't mind him. It doesn't matter. But anyway, it's a pleasure having you, and thank you for sparing your time.
Pleasure being here. I will not flow with the detractors like Sabiti. I expected Sabiti actually would be happy that I have moved in Mao's colors. You should be happy.
I don't even know where Mao belongs anymore.
Mao's colors now.
I am now ending that conversation of dress code, and we'll go on. All right. To our viewer, thank you so much for joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, so much for sparing your time. To our social media at NBS TV on X, NBS Television on Facebook, and Next Media Services, you can be able to engage us. And you will find me on at Mildred Tohaise across all my social media platforms. Like I said earlier, the conversation around it all has been mergers of government agencies and authorities. We've been at this conversation for over 4 years now, and it's been long coming. We can officially say maybe we're now almost coming to the end of the road as Parliament does pass these rationalization amendment bills of different agencies, some retained, some taken away. I want to start with Sheila. One, because she worked in Parliament back in the time, not with Joseph Sabiti, who works in Parliament currently, because he knows the nitty-gritty of how these bills came through. Sheila, looking at the conversations that we're having, because unfortunately, we at some point in time moved away from the entire gist of we are cutting this for public expenditure, or we're merging them for public expenditure, and it went into emotional feelings. Merge this, leave this one. Don't take this, stay with this one. What do you so far see in the mergers, the amendment bills that have been passed so far?
I think to me, if we are looking at the mergers, my take has always been, why were these agencies created in the first place? What were they solving? Because there was a problem why we had to have these agencies as opposed to the work being done under the ministries.
The mainstream.
Yes. And these agencies, of course, attracted so many expertise, so many professionals, because the ministries, they couldn't pay them at a certain level, so many of them had kind of drifted away to other spaces. So these agencies have served incredibly well, I would say, because they kind of focused. So when we go into the mergers, you hear people saying, no, this one should go, this one should stay because of A, B, C, and D. And to me, it is not about the emotional, we can't put in emotions in this. We must put logic. This agency, let me take an example, National Forest Authority. It is responsible for the forests in Uganda. At one time, we had a lot of deforestation. The agency was created. It had all its upheavals, but at the end of the day, have we seen kind of a semblance of trees being planted? Have we seen people take on the responsibility of saving our forests? That has been done by an agency. If we were in the ministry, it used to be a forestry department. I think it was always put in a remote place somewhere there. And nobody cared about forests.
Yeah.
And eventually, we lost a lot of the forest cover. So if we are looking at the mergers of agencies, we must look at what is their role. What role are they playing, for example? If we look at UNRA, yes, do we have roads? Yes. When they were under Ministry of Works, did we have roads? Yes, we had some semblance of roads, but at least there is a bit of focus.
Okay.
Yeah. Are some agencies relevant? Some may be irrelevant, or they have outlived their usefulness. So we should be logically debating their existence or their non-existence in terms of maybe serving the purpose they were created for.
Okay.
If we are saying we are trying to reduce the burden on the taxpayer. I don't think they are the most expensive. I know the most expensive institutions. I don't want to mention maybe Kapo and Joseph will
I don't know why
mention.
they're pointing at each other, the two gentlemen.
Those are the institutions we should be looking at and vetting, other than looking at agencies, because these agencies, some of them are really playing their role and they are very useful to us. And so, unfortunately, the agencies do not have the capacity to save themselves.
Okay.
The people supposed to save them are the ones we should be actually
Asking about the expenditures.
expenditure
Yeah,
of
on
the
the extreme end, we have plot 1, and on the immediate side, we have Parliament. Yes, that's why the two gentlemen were actually pointing at each other. Joe, let me come to
We
you.
should change the arrangement. Plot 2 in there.
Joel, do you think we've put the logic, the much needed logic, like Sheila was saying, into this rationalization? And is that where we needed to start that much? Because we're talking about expenditure. These were maybe just low-lying fruits?
Thank you so much, Mildred. The debate around rationalization has gone on, I think, for the past 6 years.
Yeah.
Why has this come about? Why now? Why not 3 years ago? I think it's a long-standing conversation because of the nature of employment it creates for political beneficiaries. People who would ideally be opposing Museveni now get a chance at a job, a fine job, where they're paid very good money. So I'm wondering why Museveni would want to abolish his agencies, because they create him bigger avenues.
But we saw that for this
patronage.
momentum to also come. He called for, what is it called, the NRM caucus?
Yeah, but that's why I'm wondering, because he's tricky. He says one thing and means another. I'm wondering why he would want to abolish this big number of jobs that for him are ways to dispense his patronage. Is it because of donor reforms? Because the donors might be complaining that we are giving money and this money is going into wastage, yet there's a duplication of roles. And that's partly to be explained by the Constitution. Because when you look at the architecture of the Constitution, the president is a person who gives jobs. It's an elite bargaining chip. It's an elite jobs giving. The president shall appoint so and so. So the president has so many avenues through which to give jobs. So why now? The other argument would be that we want to rationalize and cut down on public expenditure in Uganda. Actually, comparatively, public expenditure in Uganda is not so much. Yes, given if you place us within historical context, compare us with other developed people,
We
other
want to
level of
compare
development.
us to us based on our tax to GDP ratio versus the expenditure
Yes,
to GDP.
you can compare other people at our same level of development with tax to GDP ratio and all these things. You find that the public wage bill is not that big. It might have grown in what we call absolute terms, but not in relative terms compared to the budget as a percentage of the budget. So it is not that big. But also, if you want to really save money and have a bigger economy and do all these things, why do you target those agencies? There could be more money in other places, including taxing the guys like MTN, taxing ABSA. I mean, for me, it's just ridiculous that during the lockdown, Stanbic Bank released something called our net profit. Who was making profit in this town during COVID? So if you really want places where you can really make money, you go to these guys who are engaged in transfer pricing.
They're already paying the fair
taxed.
share
What?
of taxes. You want
No,
them to
Mildred,
increase?
they
It's
are
little.
not.
No,
It's
they
very little compared to what they should be doing.
You should
Okay.
go in
Maybe
business.
that's
You know how
increasing the
when you
threshold.
No, what he's saying, it is not compared to what they're making. Who, Sheila, you're involved in business. Which business is making that money for you to get profit? I mean, these guys are cheating you in terms of interest rates. There's nowhere in Europe you can borrow at 17%, which is what a bank here in Kampala
When
would
the CBR is on a totally different rate.
Yes, but the CBR is controlled by
And
those
it's
guys.
also about the risk.
What?
It's
Because
about
you
the
know
risk.
in banking terms it will be about the risk.
No, yeah, but that's a very racist argument. It means that there is no risk in the developed countries. That's a very racist argument. It means that black people
I
are
don't know what-
predisposed not to paying loans.
I love your arguments though as well. That go ahead, yeah. Interesting ones though. Yeah.
So these are the places you should be looking.
I never heard of racism in lending rates.
Okay, go ahead, Joe.
I think the Economist did a story that the most profitable place on earth for banks is sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay.
Yes, and these are majorly poor countries. It's where these guys come and fleece us and things like that. So if you're really interested in making more cash for the government, you would actually look at the policy level. But then you wonder if you look at something like the Bankers Act, because I want to synthesize. If you look at something like the Bank of Uganda Act, I think the political theorist Yusuf Serenkuma wrote, I think 2 weeks ago in The Observer, that he found it appalling that within the Bankers Act you find something like the Bank of Uganda somehow on advice of the Bankers Association. But the Bank of Uganda is supposed to be controlling, for example, these guys.
Yeah.
So how come they're the ones to give it advice?
They're the regulators.
How come they're the
Because
ones to
they're the
give
ones who deal with the people.
Yeah.
Because they know what
No,
is in
they
the
know the
marketplace.
business.
No, but you cannot be regulated and then give advice to the regulator. But also that, for me, points to Parliament making the law. What was in for Parliament to make this law? So it means these guys call the shots at Parliament. And like you said, this place, these UNRWAs are really
Hanging fruits.
low-hanging fruit. Let us make the argument for this rationalization and these mergers of these agencies. If you merge them and the ministry is going to ask for the same budget, because the ministries are going to say we don't have enough money to employ these people, and this work has been done previously this time.
To be more budget, actually.
Exactly. So it's more budget. So you're not. I don't think that in economic sense you're making any better argument. For me, it is going to be the same argument.
Okay.
So I'm wondering, you just want to appease donors, because I don't really trust Museveni when he says this thing of really President Museveni when he says this thing that he wants to rationalize. Someone else told me that when President Museveni shakes your hand, count your fingers. So. So essentially, him being a really political animal, there may be something to appease the donors, but I don't really see him wanting to do away with UNRWA. This failed, because if you really want to rationalize, the same week you're talking about rationalization and mergers, you appoint some heinous group of people called assistant RDCs. They also, so in essence, I don't think that she's really interested.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Through your submission and Sheila's a while ago to Joseph, Sheila talked about the essence. Why were these agencies created? But also as we think about rationalizing, because we are now saying, oh, we need to save some government money. Have we thought beyond, or did we ever have a medium and long-term conversation? Because some analysts have said, probably we have the CCCs and the SEC and the what, and those are Chinese construction companies owned by the government. Did we ever have a long-term for, agencies like UNRWA of just transitioning it and saying, now we can make UNRWA actually a construction company that is government-owned, but we are now complaining about it is not functional, we'll be saving 39 billion per month in wages, let's now take it back. Have we emphasized logic?
Mildred, can I wade in slowly on that?
Okay, as Joseph comes through.
Yes. The argument against that, when Africa had what we call structure adjustment programs in the 80s, was that governments cannot do business in Africa. The argument
that was imposed on us, yes.
Yes, and you have to understand that these are donor imposed, because even right now you might ask yourself, what is IMF saying about this? You have, I think, a World Bank representative who sits in the Central Bank of Uganda. That shows you how much they have you by. Yes, by their fingertips. So the argument was that African governments are so bloated and they cannot do business. They are so tied down to society. I think one of the scholars on that said that the African government is a lame Leviathan. It cannot. The other one says that Africa is, I think it is Goran Hayden, that the state is so perforated by the interests of the society that the state cannot perform. So what do? You have to anti-society and let the market.
And then let the market.
Let the market work. So the argument is that African governments can't work.
But
first, they don't have the expertise, and they're so tied down into chronism.
Yeah.
When you go to Nigeria, they call it prebendalism, and this. What Museveni does is patronage. So,
but what we've seen over the time, and of course with experience, that some of these were imposed and they actually do not work. And we're trying to say that is why now with a vision, I think it's Vision 2040 for Africa, where we're saying African solutions for African problems. But anyway, let me get to Joseph. Are we applying logic in this conversation?
Let me start by responding to Joel. He asked a question about having the Bankers Association advising the central bank. So I don't think that's practice that's alien to Uganda. it's practice, worldwide practice, that the people who are going to be regulated need to have a voice. So the key word is advice. Now, whether you take the advice or not is really up to you. In democracies
In
like...
most cases, they take the advice.
Well, that's up to, that's up to the central bank.
Yes, but-
Then you can't blame Parliament for that. You can't fault Parliament.
NGOs advise government
Yes.
when they are being regulated.
When they are being regulated. So it's not just a bank. In your favorite country, Kenya, the Law Society of Kenya that adjudicates in the courts actually have a representative on the Judicial Service Commission. So it's common practice. But two, I think Joel gave us the context that we had missed at the beginning of the conversation, that where did we come from? Look at President Museveni at the beginning. He did not believe in these Western ideologies. He was more aligned to, you know, what you know. And then the big boys, the IMF and the what?
Oh, we have forgotten.
I don't know, Joseph.
Paul will remind you.
I don't know, Joseph. And maybe the viewer doesn't
Initially,
know.
where he was aligned, before this shift to the Western love and embrace. So
After the break, I will.
Do I reply him now or I
no,
wait?
later. Get
You
a
will
pen and
wait
take
and
notes.
do.
Now, the structural adjustment policies, IMF and World Bank, they described us in all manners and said for the states in Africa to function, then we needed to take this direction. So we created agencies for efficiency. We dismantled Uganda Electricity Board and created 7 other, I don't know, Uganda Electricity Generation, transmission, switching, transportation of poles and everything. It came into so many agencies. The argument was that it was supposed to bring in efficiency,
You
right?
sold Stanbic.
Yeah, we sold Uganda Commercial Bank. We sold Cooperative Bank went. Everything went to create efficiency. The selling of UCB and all that, what did it create? It created for us a giant called Stanbic that gets our money from here, and you know where it ends, in South Africa. So, and the godfathers of that economy, Professor Mutebile, Chris Kasami, Keith Mwakanizi, have all gone. Now we are in a new dispensation. We have Ramadan Gobi, fresh from MUBS.
Economics that works.
The economics that works. Now,
He's also, by the way, in your liberal zealot.
So it's an opportunity for the economics that works to take the lead.
Take the lead, yeah.
So,
Joseph, sorry, is there any difference between Mutebile and, ideologically, between Mutebile and Gobi? There's none.
the difference is that Mutebile applied the economics and we see where it has taken us. So let's give Ramadan a chance to
apply his
to continue.
to see, how
continue
far
what
we
to
can
see,
go.
yes. But the point is this, that I agree in principle with actually the concept of rationalization, but case by case, right? For example, if you walk up today, and I want us to look at the patents, Mildred, the agencies that have been saved by Parliament. Look at the mood in the House when they discussed NFA, for example. Look at the mood in the House when they discussed the Dairy Corporation Authority, and see which part of the country responded in which way. You look at the mood in the House when Coffee Development Authority was mentioned, and see the part of the country that rioted. When they mentioned cotton, there was a particular part that went haywire in the House. So the economy of this country is zoned, actually, traditionally, that in the West, people will keep more cattle. Therefore, if you mention the word dairy, you're going to take that part of the country to war. So I think that MPs are caught up in this kind of situations. But also when you're deliberating on a bill like this, there are so many interests at play.
Yeah.
Right? A CEO who has been earning 53 million 30 minutes debate in the House could render you jobless. So these factors at play will come. The onus is on the MPs, the government side to actually, make a case based on actual national interests. So I would have been shocked if, for example, the rationalization of UNRWA was approved. Because you need to go back to where we're coming from. And you look at the incompetencies, the inefficiencies that have been exhibited in certain parts of the ministries, with all due respect. So for me, but also, Joel, in terms of economics, we might not be saving a substantive amount, but there's actually a saving. Let's look at it. How much was the CEOs, how much do the CEOs, the directors, the senior managers in these agencies earn? Now, when you mainstream them into the mainstream, they fall to the public service salary scale. Nelson Kapo will tell you that 90% of those people will resign on day one in the office. Number two, a director a senior manager in these agencies, look at the kind of vehicles and the mpenkonis they fly on the roads. So the cost of buying those cars, servicing them, maintaining them, fueling them,
maybe also
and hiring a driver, and hiring security guards to protect them.
Joseph, and maybe also case by case, do we do a cost-benefit analysis?
It is part of the bill.
Okay.
When you read those bills, every bill has a certificate of financial implication. It has actually the cost-benefit analysis. It has the savings that are made. But also, too, there's a question of respect and the relationship between the ministers, the political leadership, ministers, the technocrats in the ministry, and some of these
heads
agencies.
of the agencies.
So you pay a commissioner in a ministry, let's say 2 million shillings. You pay a director in an agency 18 million, and you're saying that the commissioner is supposed to somehow offer oversight over this gentleman. The person walks into your office with their tattered suits from Chiembe, and you have 18 million in your pocket, and you're looking at him and sizing him from up to down. So it's a conversation we need to have. The conversation is only complicated when in the middle of rationalization, Kapo shows up with what we call assistant RDCs, 300 of them. So the job of defending...
A chick is not Kapo, but the gentleman underwear he works.
Allowed here.
The institution which he works for.
So the conversation gets a bit... But for me, I actually think that Parliament has done quite a fantastic job in looking at those issues. Yeah. And maybe now where there are problems... if you want to understand the difference between some of these agencies that are critical and the ministries, you need to look at the work done by the Rural Electrification Agency in the time it existed. You go to the country, do your own survey, look at what they were able to achieve. And since they went, they were the first victims. They sorted them and they went. Now the poles are lying, kids are now jumping over them, Machela, Rio, Adek, over the poles for games in the villages. And the rural electrification program, I think, suffered a fundamental setback. So for me, as long as it is an objective, deliberate analysis of what to save and what to go, in principle, I think I agree with that. But also the lesson we need to take is, should we accept everything the big boys come and tell us? If IMF and World Bank come and say, turn right, turn left, jump how high. As a country, you see, one of the things that I agree with fundamentally with the president is his Pan-African ideas. The question of his conversation about the West, the bullying of African countries, and that. For me, I think that as a country, we need to start having those conversations. But also, we need to ask ourselves the questions, and uncomfortable as it might be, do we need the size of cabinet we have? Do we need the size of parliament we have? Do we need the size of, all these RDCs, RCCs, assistant RDCs, and that conversation need to be had in that context.
Thank you. And that is why I asked earlier on, did we pick the lowest hanging fruits and we left others? Because if in instance we are saying we are saving expenditure, and then we want to create efficiency, we are reducing duplication and then, like you said, plot one comes up with another hierarchy in the RDC hierarchy, and we still have a bloated cabinet that we've continuously talked about. We still have, for example, many members of parliament have said, you have a ministry, you have a National Planning Authority, but you have a planning unit under Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development.
And you have a minister in charge of planning.
You have a ministry.
Yes.
I mean a minister in charge of planning, and Kapo, that's where I ask. Are we just playing mind tricks with regard to this rationalization, or do we say this is phase one, we should be looking at phase two in another different direction?
One, first of all, assistant RDCs is not a creation, it's not a new creation. Assistant RDCs are actually supported by the Constitution. And also, we had assistant RDCs when Uganda was still under administrative powers of counties.
Do we have deputy RDCs currently?
Yes.
Do we need deputy and assistant?
So, needing is one thing, and them being provided for is another. If you want to get my opinion of both, is that we don't need them.
Okay.
Now, interestingly...
And you see, Kapo, we always hide in the law in most of the cases. Exactly. Okay, not hide, but the law is what we always bring to the fore
We've
When
all do it.
things are-
Yes.
when things are going
What I
in a
wanted to
different
what I
context.
wanted to clarify is that it's not a new creation.
Okay.
It has been there before. So
And we decided to
what is-
resurrect
eh,
it.
No, for the record, when was the last time we had assistant?
That's it. That's why I'm saying it's in the law. We
It is in
decided
the
to
law.
We're going
resurrect.
for 2020.
No, no, no.
The reason
We
why
need them.
For the record, when did
we
the
need
last
them
time
for 2026.
Okay.
So,
okay.
The most interesting part
Yeah.
about this rationalization plan is one. It was quite ironic that the rationalization, the merging and reducing the government numbers was being discussed in a parliament that is bloated. That is the first
brought
place.
by a bloated executive.
Brought by a bloated executive and supported
Members
well.
of parliament needed to first sit down and say, before we merge the other people and reduce the
Can we
numbers,
reduce
how
the
many are
numbers
we?
of parliament?
So how many are
No,
you in
before
the
cabinet,
executive?
Before cabinet
Reduce them to
discussed it,
100.
Yes, before cabinet
should have
discussed
said,
it, they
do we
should have
need the
done the
80
same.
or
So this brings the entire point in that before this is actually a small matter. Rationalization.
Yeah.
We need to start rationalization at every angle. This government is too huge. There are too many, to the extent that today, if you called government employees for a meeting, and you said every
We might
person
need
in
a
government,
stadia,
come for a
not-
meeting. You need one stadium. You need the entire zonal stadiums and then sit them there.
Wembley.
and this does not necessarily translate into
The service.
services.
Yeah.
That is the big issue here. Now, rationalization is important, but if it starts in the right way. First of all, these agencies were created because there was bureaucracy in the government. The major government, MDAs and everything, they had a bureaucratic problem. Things were not moving there. Things were not working correctly. So they decided to say, we need an agency, for instance, like Uganda Investment Authority, Uganda National Resource Authority, that will make things faster, that will make things go quickly. And the argument was clear then. It was very clear. These agencies were moving things faster than the usual politics of you see, go here, go there. Yes? Now, bringing them back in under the situation where things have not changed,
Or worse.
are worse than they were then. To what benefit is it? Now, the most interesting part about it is that, like Sabiti and the other, and Joel said, we are going to face a problem of paying them. When you leave, when you go to Ministry of Works, for instance, somebody is between 3 million and 2 million. And then you're going to bring somebody from an agency, from UNRWA, who is coming in and he has 8, 10 million. This person has health insurance, they have NSSF, yes? How are you going to fold them in?
We will subject them under the Public Service Act, and
So
if
when
they
you-
don't want, they will resign, and then the ministers are saying government will compensate, which is a one-off.
The problem with that is that,
And then
the problem with that is that if we take them out and they say resign, then we are also going to find ourselves creating an agency for the non-employed to say, okay, you are unemployed now, we need to employ you. Because if we are creating a situation, then we need to look at the after effects of it.
Okay.
When they came to discuss this in the caucus, the idea was that we are going to save 1 trillion. But I want to tell you today, what we are spending on, before even we rationalize, if we just reduce the expenditure without rationalizing anything, we can get the 1 trillion or more. We are spending a lot of money on useless things, and we think that our problem is the agencies. The agencies are not the problem. The problem is the structures that we have behind us. So if we change the structures of different government institutions, then we will not need to touch the agencies at all.
Okay.
Most importantly, the people who are fighting to get these agencies back into the ministry are fighting so that they get the budget. And when they get the budget, and when they get, because if you look, for instance, at UNRWA is self-sustaining at one point. Yes? If you look at certain agencies, they are self-sustaining. So if you bring them back in, someone is looking at that part. Yes? There are sinister motives in this, first and foremost.
Yeah.
So it is important that when we want to look at rationalization, we start with why do we have a big government first and foremost? Why do we have a big parliament? 500 people want to say, we are too many. You are 500, but you're saying the other people are many.
Thank you very much, Nelson. We'll be taking a very short commercial break, but returning on the same conversation. I love that before Cabinet would have any conversation about this, they should have first rationalized themselves. And before Parliament could also be able to discuss this, they should have been able to look at them. What is the bigger problem? Continue with the conversation on our social media at NBS TV on X, NBS Television on Facebook and X Media Services, and as well at Mildred Tuhaise. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thank you so much for keeping it NBS Television, and welcome through to the Media Roundtable. I do still have my journalists with me on the panel, Nelson Bwire, also known as Kapo, Joseph Sabiti, I have Joel Mksa and Sheila Kamara, as we still make sense of the conversation with regard to rationalization. Now, like we clearly said, for here where we are, we're talking about expenditure, we're talking about the cost of public administration, and clearly out of our conversation, agencies were just a drop in the ocean. What then? Where do we need to look? Maybe one would say this is phase one, and we should have phase two of a continued conversation with regard to rationalization, because after all, we are also still waiting for President to see whether he assents or not to some of the bills or has reservations about some. How bigger do we need to cast our net? I'll start with you, Joel, with regard to cutting down on expenditure, but also saving the revenues, because we cannot have about 40% of our budget going into debt repayment. And we don't seem to have a program that says this is to win us off, borrowing all through the time. Like a baby, you'll start with semi-soluble because there is a process of winning you off. We don't seem to have that. Where do we need to cast the nets?
I think the Electoral Commission is organizing elections for about 3 million people. 3 million people, just people working in elected posts. What do we need to do with this? I think we need to settle the political question. And that's not an easy question, because when you look at most of Africa, the public wage bill will be mostly that. Whether in Kenya, go to Tanzania and things like that. As these countries advance, democracy deepens. And democracy deepens when you have, the argument I think is that when you have more people vying for offices. But that is an old question. The question of who belongs, because you have new districts being created all the time. And to answer that question is not as easy as saying, like the banal analysis I hear in the media, that President Museveni goes to woo these people and gives them districts so that they return votes in his favor. I think even on the ground, these districts are needed. These people trade. It's a Faustian bargain between the person they give the vote and what they need. And why do we have those districts? You remember that the Local Government Commission before, in the 1990s, was headed by Professor Mamdani. Disagreed bitterly with the creation of districts as we're doing it now, because that nature mimics a colonial logic. The colonialists, when they're creating up Uganda, because we are a bunch of nations coming together, when they're creating up Uganda, they formed all these nations, the Baganda, the Bagiswa, and all these places. So they say, you, Baganda, have a tribal homeland. And that tribal homeland gives you access to land, to rights according to land. So the districts created mimic a tribal homeland. That's why when you go to one district, you find one tribe becomes a majority and another tribe becomes a minority. So the minority within that district demands their own district because they're excluded, especially in jobs being given at the local government level. So they demand for a district. If you are democratic, these pressures somehow reach you. And when these pressures reach those who have to come back for votes, it's just feasible that they will give you the districts because they need the vote. So this is a political question. The other political question is, for example, these agencies. These agencies, is that person YZ doesn't have a job, they're poor. And they're poor, they can do all sorts of angry things. Among them is opposing you. So these jobs become a way. Parliament is also part of the job. Agencies are also part of the job. They become a way through which you can talk to the nation's elite. You get it? They can talk to the nation's elite. Because imagine, many people there in Parliament who don't have jobs. I mean, some are former journalists. We all know that the media industry has collapsed. So where would they be? There would be active voices today precipitating change. So how do you avoid that? Employ them. So this is a political question, and African countries have battled with it for over decades of the question centrally of who belongs and who doesn't. And how do you belong? You belong when we bring you within the levers of the state by giving you a state appointment. So XYZ community feels they're no longer excluded because they have a deputy prime minister somewhere. And those are those are questions to which you cannot get clear answers. I don't expect that the public wage bill will decrease. I actually see it increasing, especially given the peculiar circumstances of Uganda, where you have had a president that has lasted for 5 centuries now as president, 500 years. So more or that, it will need more concessions.
The president hasn't lasted 500 years. Or are you counting every year as 10 years? That's exactly it.
It's too long.
Yeah.
Before you, have you listened to the president talk about how long the NRM and him have been fighting for the change of Africa? You'll be amazed.
Maybe figuratively, yes. Figuratively, 500 years would come. Multiplication of 1 by 10.
Yes. So Mildred, for me, the question of belonging is a very central question, and people look at it as an abstract question. But for me, I see it's the center of all this employment.
Okay.
It is the reason why Kapo employs about 1,200. The Honorable Samji is the one who keeps numbers on that. I don't know why he's obsessed, but yes, they keep 1,200 because, well, the president reacts to these pressures. And for me, that's just expected of anyone. When you go to these places, the pressures from these publics will act upon you, and you'll need more districts.
Okay.
And the logic, Mildred, I'm sorry to cut you, and the logic, for example, of even the idea of a federated state that we are demanding for, because it may ideally reduce public wage bill, but also it would have adverse effects in terms of its politics.
All right.
How? If you say that we're creating Baganda as a federated state, what about those non-Baganda in there?
Yeah.
Because the idea of a federated state, for example, in Uganda, is an ethnic federated state, not a territorial state like in America. You say Kansas is just a territory. So for me, it's a very political question that we need to think about wisely. And sorry to say, we need to go back to the works of the political theorist Mohamed Mamdani.
And it is even harder, especially that you talked about the political homelands. And for a country like Uganda, which has, I don't know how many ethnicities.
Yeah, the tribal homeland.
I don't know how much we would have to split the country. Nelson, I'm coming to you. From plot 1 is where people always find problems and solutions for this country. So as we talk about reducing public expenditure and managing the little that we have, where do we need to cut the cord
For people
to
that
be able
spend
to fit us?
500 million a day.
They used to spend back in the day 1 million shillings, no, 10 million shillings on
1 million
water
on
a
dressing.
day.
No, 1 million on dressing. The person who puts on white shirts on.
1 million shillings on water per day on plot 1, the last I checked from Parliament. But anyway, where do we need to look?
When you people start speaking about plot 1, you should know it is a whole government.
Exactly.
It has the security, it has media, it has the chefs and cooks, it's a whole thing. So one day when I come here,
we are saying it's bloated.
one day when I come here and there is an opportunity, I should actually tell people that so that they understand clearly how State House spends money and I will justify it here.
It is justified. It is even legal, but we are saying it is too big.
So,
that is it.
I want to go straight to the point on what we need to do as a country. Now, I don't know, these are the guys who keep numbers, Joel and Sabiti. How much money does every Ugandan have to pay so that we finish the debt?
No, it continues to change.
Yes.
Because I think around 2020-21, around there, the conversation was around 5 million shillings or so.
No, I think it was 1.5.
No, it was,
rising.
yes,
But I also
close
think
to 2 million
It's still
shillings.
2 million.
Yes,
about 2
and it was
million,
a story
5 million.
done by the DM monitor, but I also think it's a bad way to look at things in that
A
fashion.
bad way to look at
Yeah.
it. So, but I want to, the Ugandans out there, as we go into these debates of rationalizing and reducing expenditure, every Ugandan out there should look at things before we go to the next elections. One, do we need to have all the leaders that we have? Do we need to have all the politicians that we have? The amount of jobs, government jobs, are 870,000. It's not even 1 million. Those are government jobs, civil service, 870,000. The number of politicians we have in this country is about 3 million.
3 million, yeah.
As a lot of people. And this is the issue. The politicians decide how they are paid. 3 million people putting us on gunpoint and saying, I want 5 million each month. I want 20 each month. Let's increase my salary is now a little because the economy is going this way. So we are getting a lot of money and throwing it in a number of people to represent us to reduce the government budget. So we are working in inverted, that's what we call, we are working in inverted reasoning. So we are going to waste all our time getting 3 million people to sit down and tell us that we actually have a big problem. There is a lot of money going. But there are 3 million. So, Ugandans out there, before we go to the next election, and actually there's a place
Which
we went
Ugandans
to.
are you appealing
we
to?
went
That's why I'm laughing.
we went to a certain event somewhere with the president, and somebody stood up and said, we want a district. Someone stood up and said, we want in this day and age. So I don't know whether we all want to be on the same page as Ugandans, or some people strictly have decided to say, we are selling the country. So if you people want to go that side, for us, we are going to the market. So Ugandans and all of us need to go, first of all, and ask ourselves, why are we spending money on consumptive activities? Why are we spending money on sustaining politicians in every angle? Why are we spending money on things that are not going to give back?
Yeah, sure.
We were ravaged by COVID here. We have not learned the lessons. If we are trying to limit our expenditure, now we need to go back. Now, we are paying debts, and these debts are actually from big salaries and big expenditures. We are paying debts. That means we are reducing the money that is going in health. We are reducing the money that is going on roads. We are reducing the money that is going to education. And these are the things that pay us back. We are reducing the money that is going to agriculture. We can actually have all these things work out for the better if we reduce expenditure on what are not priorities and put them on priorities. Me, I want to believe that we want, when President Museveni keeps talking about patriotism, whenever I am nearby, I want to go and tell him sometimes, I want to keep quiet and say, we should start patriotism by saying, whoever we vote into office, they should be serving us. They should be giving us a favor. So we should not pay them.
And yet he said he's not a servant.
He's paid 3 million shillings.
But he said he's not a servant. If you want him to serve, he said he's not a servant.
So we should come to a state one time where we say politics, we should be choosing Sabiti because of his energy, because of his ability to help us go to a certain direction. And therefore, Sabiti should be given a job as a public servant and structured through U4. No, but so he should have something else he does.
Okay.
This is my imaginative
And I see where you're taking us, because yes, for many politicians, this is a job. Their first flight.
It is a job.
I'm sorry to say, but I know that a number of them, their first flight, their first, then others will think about advancing education. Basically, life changes when politics comes.
But Mildred, you're decentering the importance of politics, especially in fragile societies like Uganda's. for you, you're looking at it because you cannot even be
No, I am
healthy
looking at
in
it
an
as a
unstable
service.
country.
No, I am looking at
Politics is a
politics meant
service.
to
It
be a
should be.
service
No,
that
but-
he is
but you
talking
see,
about. But
it-
many
no, it
are
must
looking
return
at.
gains.
No, listen here. I am trying to decipher it to the service that Kapo is explaining, and yet many of our politicians look at that as a job.
That's in an ideal state of
Mildred, let
Politics.
Kapo just go and wash his face and go and take tea.
Yes.
And
Why?
go and eat potatoes.
Why?
Because you more than anybody
And
knows.
actually, I was coming
Yes,
to you, yes, Joseph.
Kapo sits at the right place where Uganda is seen from a 360.
Plot one.
And Uganda is a very creative, interesting country to look at. I want to use two examples to illustrate. One is Tororo district. I don't know if any of you has taken interest in that.
Oh, yes.
Two people who have lived together, intermarried, coexisted. Some of them
Some of
can't
them are
even
this way,
speak their
some of them-
languages.
Any.
Wake up and say, we want our own district. That would be okay. Then the fight becomes, the municipality must be in our district.
Yes.
So the president even had to send a team to London to get the colonial map.
Yeah, the boundaries.
Up to today, nobody has seen the map. Two sides.
same
are-
for apart.
each side.
The same for apart.
Each side. Yeah.
We send for satellite images. We need to understand where.
Now, each side is saying the map shows that Tororo municipality is with us. So you have Tororo County, and you have the other side of, where the Japadola are.
The Iteso.
Now, the Iteso and the Japadola, these people live in the same town. Their economies are intertwined. They party together. They live together. That is how complex Uganda is. The second example I want to give you is when I was a young boy, there was a fight before Zombo was created as a district. There was a forum that came together to agitate for it. There was a gentleman called Yotam. He used to be the Secretary of Finance of the Biganebi district, Secretary of Finance and Planning, a very brilliant leader. He rose up and said no to the creation of Zombo district. That man today cannot even win a village election.
Why?
Because how can you oppose development? But the local person...
No, that's not thinking. He's
the
not
local
saying it
person-
is. That's
The
a
local
thinking.
person thinks
listen.
that, he talked about Tororo. How developed is Tororo? Even if they split that into 20 districts, you
Now.
see,
No, no, but you're
the
being-
summit is...
That's why I'm saying Kapo needed to go and wash his
summit
face
is-
and go and take
go and
tea.
text
The
him.
summit is...
Okay, let me give Kapo time to wind up his
The summit
conversation,
is-
and I'll come to you,
The
Joseph.
summit is of this world. Summit
Mildred,
is
I want to make a
summit
contribution to
wants
this
to be
debate.
summit
Yeah.
wants to go to a political
not-
angle
that's
in
not
future.
even the point.
So sometimes, and these arguments, most of the politicians bring up these arguments. First of all, are coming from a selfish angle.
Yeah.
Because if you create for me a district, that means you've created for me new constituencies.
Yes.
I am going to parliament. So if we go in that angle, we are going to have, in future, 1,000 members of parliament. 1,000 members of parliament, new creation of districts means that we have more councillors, we have more LCs. That means the number will go to 6 million. So if you go to 6 million, we are talking about rationalization. You see, we are in a situation where politicians here are getting a car and driving us 1,000 kilometers backwards.
But Kapo,
So-
you are talking
All right,
about...
thank you. Sheila, yes. Sheila
You know,
wanted to
I-
weigh
I've really-
to the conversation
I've
you
really
were having.
been looking at this guy. You are talking about politicians as if they are born and should be politicians. Any one of us here can be a politician.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
when you are talking about, we are appealing to Ugandans. Those Ugandans are waiting to get into the same position.
Because we make it lucrative.
Everybody, it is so lucrative.
Yeah,
that
that's
right
what I was
from
saying. It is a
LC1
job. It's not a
Yes,
service.
So the
right-
point
right
Okay,
from
I'm
let Sheila conclude.
Right from LC1,
Yes.
people want that position. Moving a cow in Uganda, those of us who rear cows, you start LC1,
Yes.
he has to get
Letters.
his cut.
Yes.
You go to the
Then
other
you
district.
get to the Y.
You go
Everybody
to the
gets a
DISO.
cut. Now you think that those people we are appealing for, because now the neighbor of the LC1 chairman is seeing the LC1 taxing, because the taxes, those are informal taxes we pay in this country. So all politicians at those levels, they have competitors who want to take those positions.
Yeah.
And next time, new ones are coming in.
And the
And you are
attrition
not
rate
going to tell
continues
me
to
now
grow.
you are appealing to the rationalization of these new entrants. They will say, also us, let's first eat.
Let's first
Yeah,
eat.
but-
And
So-
Okay, but
Can-
Sheila,
can
where
we
then?
structure-
Yes, that's
can
where
we-
now
Where then?
can
Where
we
then do we
structure?
look?
Where do we look? Where do we
Yes.
stop?
now, where
Yes.
we look.
We just
Mildred,
keep going.
Because it still,
Wait a minute.
no, wait a minute. It still goes to what Joel was saying. It is the politics. The
Yeah,
political
yeah, yeah.
question.
It's a
But you
political
see,
question.
this country is, I think each one of us, we are hostages
Oh.
Of our politics.
of our politics.
Yes.
Of the colonial
And
legacy.
No.
No,
Let's
our own
not-
politics.
You were not
60
here.
years
decided
later,
to
we
maintain
You
can't
were
it.
not
colonials.
here when the colonialists were
but
here.
the legacy lives on.
Neither was I.
No,
Yeah.
that is to
So
show that the president
it
has
is-
no history.
Yeah, neither was I here. So it is wrong to say some colonialist I never
Who
saw
left 60 something
is
years
the
ago.
cause of my problem. I am the cause of my problem.
you
and
can
you
cut me
should
short
be-
before I make
Okay,
my point.
okay. Let me give Joseph 2 minutes and we take a break. Let me give Joseph 2 minutes and we take
I
a
wanted
break.
to tell Kapo
Yeah.
that he's not a very good student of President Museveni. This
He always
country,
wants to talk to the president.
I am.
this country is volatile. This country is hinged together by selfish interests of our politics. When
They're not actually
See what
selfish.
you're saying.
Gentlemen, can we listen? Can we give him the chance to weave
One
his
has
point?
to sanitize that and say, we have allowed, we want to go there.
Actually, that's not the point. I
Okay.
think that you cut me short before.
Continue.
So I said there are two schools of thought.
Yeah.
They're the majority Ugandans. Those ones in Zombo who voted out Yotam because he said we don't need
We don't need a
another
district.
Who are the majority? Those ones who ate rats in Tororo because they wanted districts. Who are the majority? Then the Kapos and us who are saying we should think through
Impose.
this. We should, okay, who think we have superior
rational.
knowledge?
Yeah, that's what
we think that our knowledge is superior.
You went to school.
We went to school last summer, we wear suits, and therefore our views should pass. No, this country doesn't run
And we are
like
saying
that.
we're in a democracy where the majority takes the day.
But also number two, the question of creation of, I think that this parliament should be credited by the SOFA. There has been no new administrative unit. And
Yeah.
if things
Yeah.
go as planned, as the discussions have been privy to, there will actually be no administrative units
And that's where
in
we
the
should
next 5 years. So for me, that's the starting point. But also, Kapo is alive to the politics of this country. I want to give you an example of a place called Mitoma. When a young man called
tiny like
a young man called Thomas Tayewa emerged as a force to reckon with in the politics of that district and the constituency, before he even became deputy speaker, one of the big shots went and got a sub-county. No, after losing elections the first time, went and got a sub-county and declared it a constituency. Now we have Ruhinda North and Ruhinda. Now, so when Kapo says Ugandans, you see, I used to argue here that when you say the people, they are the people. Then the people. Those are the ones who matter. They're the ones who take decisions, and it's the reality of our time. So Ugandans today, if I woke up,
Mildred, this is very important to me. I need to.
if I woke up today,
We need
and
to
went-
take a
and
break,
went to my home
gentlemen.
sub-county
I
and
need to make
said,
a point.
if you elect
guy
me,
should-
I'll make your sub-county a district, I will get all the votes.
Yeah.
But for you, you're looking at
30 seconds. We take a
You're
break.
looking at it only in its subjective motivations that someone wants a job and things like that. What about the objective outcomes? There are
Of
groups that
service
feel-
delivery.
No, I'm not looking at it in terms of service delivery. Because even if you have less, I don't think that the services of Uganda will change substantially. Because it's a poor country. I don't think that
It's
a poor country.
Very
No,
poor
no, we
country.
are very
No,
rich.
yeah.
Looking
We are
at the
very
money
rich
we
country.
lose in corruption, you
I'm
wouldn't call
assuming
us.
even now.
You
But
wouldn't
Mildred,
call
you're
us.
derailing my point. The point the
Go
point
ahead.
of colonial legacy.
Because I didn't want you to call us
Don't
poor when we
call
keep
us poor.
stealing money.
When you don't have money in your pocket, don't call the whole country
Go ahead,
poor.
yeah.
It's a rich country.
The question for me is that don't look at it as someone only who wants to get a job. That person represents legitimate views of a constituency.
That is it,
And
yes.
those people, the
If they are
Japadol
voted-
asking for a district in Tororo, you
If
think
they
it's
are voted,
Yes,
if
yes,
they are
you think that
voted
it's only-
legitimately, looking at our kind of electoral process,
Let us
if they're
assume.
voted
Let us assume that because no,
You go to
actually-
Tororo today
Yeah.
and hold a referendum on whether they want a district in
Or
Tororo
not.
County or
Yes.
not.
They will still
So for me, but that
100%
but that is a
will vote
question.
for a
That's
district.
why I told you that's a question of a colonial legacy. Because when you have a district, it means that you have access to land, and those who don't, they don't have access to those land rights, especially in a peasant society.
Okay.
So that's why the question of a colonial legacy becomes important, and that's why I
John,
say
we are too old to
we
blame the
need to
colonials.
reread
We are
the
too old.
works of
We
Professor
shouldn't.
Mamdani Mahmoud as a political theorist.
No,
we
We are
are
too-
62 years
we
are
are
into
too
beyond.
old to
independence.
blame
None of
the
us was
We
alive.
said, okay, someone
when
might say we have
under
neocolonialism.
But that is also still, we can
No.
still
No, but
say
you- no,
one
but
thing.
you-
What do you
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
our viewer? Go to our social media platforms as we take a break. Let's get back. Welcome back. Thank you for keeping it NBS Television. It's the Morning Breeze. This is the Media Roundtable as we get journalists in their perspective, making sense of some of the stories that have made headlines during the week. And of course, it was a conversation with regard to rationalization and cutting government expenditure and what we need to do. I think there is no one particular way. So many ways that we need to deal with, but I think one point that was agreeable in the entire conversation was the political question of the country. That needs to definitely be dealt with. Now, to infrastructure. It's the rainy season, water and infrastructure, not any friends at all. And of course, people around Masaka, Katonga area, there is always a huge conversation with regard to that. And this only, by the way, is not talking about infrastructure, but it speaks to climate change because down in Tanzania, over 155 people have been killed by flash floods. When it comes to Kenya, I think about 32 people have so far been lost since the onset of the rains in March. And here in Kampala, we're not just talking about the flash floods and the rains. We're talking about infrastructure. Where is the biggest problem? Where is the lasting solution? Is it about the quality of the roads? Is it about the maintenance of the roads? Let me start with Sabiti right here. Away from the experience you get in Zombo with your infrastructure, you get another tale while in the city. What do you think there could be the hardest problem for our infrastructure sector?
Mildred, I think that there are aspects of this country that I don't know, need prayers, need divine intervention, but I don't understand because logically in our planning, the capital should be a priority, right?
Yeah. Because
about 80% or so of our revenue is collected 75% is collected from within the Kampala metropolitan area. I am not an expert in engineering. I have even failed to understand what is being done on the roads because I find machines dancing, patching up. Then the next day you pass there, there's a lake that has been created there. And then I saw the engineering brigade of the SFC come. and then there's all this comment. There are two things I want. I have two suggestions. One, I think that as a country we need to think about developing our own national construction company. That is why I think that I am one of those people who believes in actually building the capacity of the engineering brigade of the UPDF. One, because the UPDF is under command, has a command and control, and they fear. It is an agency where if the commanders are not happy with your work and they think your hands have pipped, there's something called court martial where you don't want to go. We need an indigenous construction company that probably can patriotically do some of these works. Because honestly, if you ask me what is happening with infrastructure in the city, Mildred, it is two contrasts. There is this funny thing happening in Kampala that you call repairs, construction, I think, that I don't understand. Maybe because I have not done engineering. It reminds me of a day I went with Kanana Kalema to Tororo, and there's money that had gotten lost for a road. So the municipal engineer took us to show us the road. We were standing in a bush, and the guy was saying the road is here.
It's here.
So I said, where? Here. Said, it is not me who didn't tell you to have competence, technical competence to see a road. Me as an engineer, I see the road here. and the man was serious that the road is there. I tried to open my eyes like this. I was like, maybe I have problems.
By the power of the Holy Spirit.
Yes, I was like, maybe I need divine oversight. So then you drive, from Gulu side to Kitkum to the border. Yeah. You drive from Arua to Koboko at the border. You drive the oil roads in Bunyoro. You drive through Murchison Falls National Park. Fantastic infrastructure, right? Then you come, then for us, some of us are even unfortunate. You come from a place where there are no roads. The potholes are there, then you have to look for the road. Then you come to Kampala again. You must start dancing on the road and everything. I think that we need a proper conversation, maybe a master plan in terms of, but also how do you then open up the infrastructure in Kampala where the Kapos are building on road reserves in the middle of the road. There was a time in Nigeria here where someone woke up and built a fence that cut off a road. The people from this side could not, until I think a Pharaoh big man came and knocked the fence down. The general planning, we can't even widen the roads in Kampala.
No.
Okay? If you start widening the road, the cost of compensation alone will be worse than what you can do. So, but also, what role does One of the agencies I wanted to be rationalized was KCCA.
You see, rationalization.
No.
Rationalization is quite selfish. I told you people here.
Emotional.
It's emotional.
It is, because, look, you have an agency that sits in the presidency. Then you have a political leadership that believes that even meeting the president is haram. These two, the political wing and this technical wing under the office of the president, under presidency, are supposed to sit and plan for the country. But the leadership of the political wing thinks meeting the president is haram, is illegal. It means you have sold out. So there's a small group running politics at City Hall. Then there's a technical team that is running technical works. Then there's a minister of Kampala. Then there's a state minister for Kampala. And then there's the president's office, which is also in charge of Kampala. I don't know. Maybe we need to get engineers, put them in this seat.
There's also Salim Uhuru. He's on his own.
There's another agency called Salim Uhuru. Who is also, then you're about to declare Muhammad Nsereko an entity also. And then, Mildred, let me tell you the interesting thing about Kampala. Remember the story that Seranja did about Chifesi and people who, crime commanders, of people who have zoned this country, this city. There was a time I was doing a story about aviation fuel. If you want to understand how complex organizing this city is, there's a place I wanted to go to in Kisenyi where the children buy from this fuel. And they told me, you can only access that place through a politician, an opposition politician. Without him, you will not go there. I tried to go there. I found guys with marks of axe. They just pointed at me once. With my thin legs, I took off. I went to this politician. He gave me his brother. I went with this politician's brother there. Those people welcomed me and talked to me. That's how I delivered that story of aviation fuel. Now, this city has what you see, the normal administration of with the Dorothy Chisaka, Arias Lukwago, the Kapos. And then there's an underworld.
But it has
Like any other Like any other
He's talking about residence.
You should tell
I protect
some it
you.
is strictly.
I protect you.
I am strictly for State House.
Yeah,
I don't know what happened.
Nelson Kapoor works for State House, not
Works for, works with.
one of them with or for State House.
So,
He's about to
I
tell me
think
I'm
that
in charge
Mildred,
of roads.
no.
Technically, though.
Technically, you are. So when you actually, I wanted us to see.
But he works with State House, and the State House
supervises the city.
Supervises the city.
So I was actually suggesting that I cede all my time to Kapo to explain these things. Do they have a plan?
And actually,
do
yeah.
they want to? What
You-
do they,
you read
where
my
are
mind.
we going as a
You
country?
read my mind.
What is the master plan?
Going back to Kapoor, Kampala is the capital city, yes. Is it that we have not done an analysis? Because it's the same thing I was asking about the movement of Luzira Prison. You know, we're saying there is a lot of growth. Do we ever get to look at medium, long-term conversations about the city? Yes, we will say by the time Kampala city was formed, we had just a few millions of people, a few cars, and now this is where we are. Where is the plan? Because every other time, we're complaining about infrastructure in the city.
There was a committee that was recently set up to plan for this city. It has the likes of Tabu Tajira, Mandanga Virano. I don't know if you...
Well, that's
it has
a professional association, not for the city. It's an association of urban planners.
Urban planners,
Yes.
which includes companies, an urban place. So I want to state again, I was here before, and I said, one of our biggest problems, even before we talk about the other issues, after corruption, our other problem is planning. This country, I think, is either having no space for planners or has no planners at all. I want to go straight to the roads. Yesterday, of course, we were in the city commissioning Nachivubo. There were some elements of the city that were well paved and had good roads. And I want to thank, sometimes you have to first appreciate before you beat. I want to thank the KCCA. There are some elements in the city, some areas in the city that have actually good roads. So we use, I don't know if whether they just directed us there
To there.
because the president was passing there and they wanted him to see a different picture, not the real one. That is also possible that you can decide to say, since the president is coming, let him pass in the good places. So we went, we saw very good roads in the city down there. But our biggest issue is planning and maintenance. Ugandans have the worst culture of maintenance. Because when we are planning in our different budgets, we say we want to put a road. But I think we fall short of saying, how is this road going to be maintained over time? And this is also goes back to the point we had in the previous conversations. Most of our bigger budgets, our bigger expenditures are coming in redoing things that we have already done.
Oh, it also goes then to the quality of the works that are done.
The quality of the works, by the way, sometimes you may not really have an issue with the quality of the work if you're going to keep maintaining. For instance, if you have a bad quality road, you will see it in the maintenance structures. If you keep maintaining the road, then eventually it will become of quality. If you buy a bad bulb and then the bulb goes off and then you wait for another year to replace it, that's an issue. But if you keep saying, no, it is flickering, let me put another one in. So we need to go into a culture of maintenance. There are roads, like there is a road that comes from Chalwajara, goes to Chira, roundabout. About a year ago, it started developing a pothole towards the end. Slowly, it came. And now, that pothole
It's bigger than the road.
has come from the other end and crossed the road. And it has cut off the road.
It's now a zebra crossing.
It's now a zebra crossing pothole. Every day, people are passing there, including the mayor of Chira. He passes there.
He has no budget, he will tell you.
That is okay. But including there's a time at 2 a.m., someone came with a siren, I don't know, one of the, what is F, finance or something?
Finance.
Yes, one came with an A, finance. There is even the members of parliament stay there, I see H. They pass there daily, and the road keeps. So,
Keep being eaten away.
we should look into our minds. How do we let certain things go to certain extents? Do we have the capacity to sit down and say, every other time, when we plan for something, we should plan for the maintenance? I have used the expressway. That's the best road so far I have seen. And they put lights recently. But over time, you keep seeing certain lights are going off. And before we know it, all those lights will go off. And then we shall go back and say, we need a budget now to
replace
install
the
new lights. The expenditure goes bigger. So, Ugandans and everybody in the government needs to put themselves in a point where we need to start maintaining rather than replacing.
Okay.
What is happening is that even in UK, they have a huge budget. They say if there is a tiny spot, they come and fix it because there's a maintenance budget. So maintenance is going to help us reduce expenditures, is going to help us reduce the budget of redoing things. There's a road that is around the Ginger Market. That road is going, when I was studying in Ginger College, that road was smooth, was wonderful, was nice. You would pass there and not feel anything. But when I went back to check on some people on Easter, it would take a whole while to come and convince me that there was a road there. It is now, what is the opposite of a tarmac road?
Mara.
It is now a Maram road.
Kato Road.
Yes, and it is now it is now a Maram road. How does it become? So it will come in the future budgets that we need a road here. But there was
A road that we needed to maintain. Thank you. I feel your pain.
I have a
as
question
well.
for Kapo. Just a minute. I have a question for Kapo.
Who gave you the point?
I am requesting that.
It's okay. That was tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Maybe in just a minute. Our time is fast spent. Ask the question.
You'll ask later. Let them finish.
There are two things. One, where Kapo sits is by constitution where the Minister of Finance sits.
Yes. Yeah.
What is the plan for Kampala?
Kampala
is
Because you've talked
about
about... No, the executive budget comes as one. It comes from the Minister of Finance, who by our constitution is the President of the Republic. What conversations are happening about our capital? Because Parliament just receives the budget and processes. with ceilings, with all
You can still defer the question if you don't have.
With my pay grade, how would I sit in a conversation of finance?
I saw
and
that
the president?
answer. Thank you. That's why I said you can defer it if you're not meant to answer it. But Sheila, to you, infrastructure.
I think for me, the infrastructure of Kampala, people, if we can be genuine and look at the rate at which Kampala is growing, and all these skyscrapers. These roads, I don't think the Kampala roads we are talking about were built to sustain those 12-wheelers and the stones and those things are heavy. So whether we like it or not, as long as we still need these skyscrapers that are going up.
Sheila,
these
that's why I
apartments.
asked.
Yeah.
Do we do a feasibility analysis to understand the level and rate of growth that we are undertaking?
I think sometimes with development, sometimes it can be faster than what you planned for. Sometimes the development can overtake you and you start working backwards to keep with the development. Okay, we knew that our population was increasing really at a terrific rate. And we still felt maybe that our children, because most of us started in this one single room, the Mizigo, our children need a 2-bedroom apartment. And now the Mizigo are out of vogue. As long as somebody has gone to university, graduated, they will talk about apartments, not the single roomed. So those apartments have to be built and at a very, very fast rate. At one time I was saying, who is going to live in these apartments? I'm shocked.
We have a housing deficit, my dear, of 5 million.
The houses are actually being occupied.
But many are empty.
Yes, many are empty, many are occupied, but they are still going up. And just like Nairobi at one time, I think they had so many which were not even occupied, but they were built. And as long as they are being built, those 12-wheelers are going to be ferrying materials into Kampala. And just a small pothole, as long as 5 of them pass in the same pothole, it becomes into the lake Kapo is talking about. So I think as we are talking about the development, decentralization is our biggest evil. These roads belong to local government, and local government has to fund them. And I can assure you, if you tried to repair a pothole without the authority of KCCA or said as residents we are going to repair, I think you can even be taken to court because those are their roads. They know
they're happy to see them like that.
Those are their roads. They have their cut. So it is.
And do you think the 1 billion government is giving to the districts is sufficient as well?
Of course, it may not be sufficient depending on the population in that country and the levels of development in that
of the district.
Of the district. The level of development, the population, the infrastructures that are going up in that particular district. So there are too many complexities. So sometimes I'm like, I think for my later years, I may have to live with potholes for a long time to come.
and get used to.
And get used to them because either we shall start walking in order to get, because passing that Nigeria road, the Subaru guys who used to cruise on it, these days they are so miserable. You see them trying to
negotiate through. Joe, you take the last few minutes. Where are we going or headed with our infrastructural development, especially now looping in what Sheila talks about as the development, the rapid development and urbanization that we're having for the city center mainly?
2 issues for me. One is the agrarian question. 2 is a question of deepening democracy. The agrarian question in the sense that for the first time in African economic trajectory, you have many people coming to the urban centers because there is nothing to do in the rural settings. So of course they will levy a lot of pressure on existing infrastructure. But that in itself exclusively cannot explain why infrastructure in Kampala, because I see people complaining about that the roads are bad in Kampala. For me, I see no roads. The people should be advocating for the creation of roads, don't say that the roads are bad because these are cattle roads. The question for me here, in terms of democracy deepening, is why, despite the numbers, 75% of tax collected here, 64% of GDP is manufactured here in Kampala and its metropolis, why has the government paid lip service? I think the president has a serious policy bias. I saw him the other day explaining that his daughter took him around the road, saw those potholes and things like that. but he was saying that his desire is to connect the city to the country and not connect city to city. So that's a serious policy bias on the side of the president. Number two is the president. The last time the president cared about this city was between 2011 and 2016, and in terms of electoral results, he had gotten, I think, 245,000 votes, and basically had 240,008 votes. So the difference was 3,000 votes. So the president thought that his investment in Kampala through the appointment of Jennifer Msisi could give any dividend. 2016 proved miserable. His first interview after the election in 2016, where there were about 100,000 something votes, the margin between him and Besigye was over 100,000 votes. His first interview was that Msisi has caused me these troubles. So the president must have learned that despite objectively investing in the city, it can cause stiff competition for him and things like that. And Kampala also
So
does
he's just decided to neglect it.
Yes, yes, and that's how democracy plays out. Kampala does not have a serious person to advocate for it.
Your assumption is
But
that
yes,
the president's
he has.
investment is
The
backed,
minister of,
by
the minister
voting.
of
By political
Kampala.
calculation, yes, of course. Why
You
does he
haven't
invest in
appointed
places?
executive director to work with the
Yes,
technical.
but the executive director needs a budget. He does not apportion that budget. In his speech, you should
They
see
will
that
tell
serious
you that
policy
they
bias.
also have a budget. The
that-
political wing,
yeah,
it is the
but
politics,
Kampala
the
also,
politics, the
despite
politics.
having a minister, does not have a person to lobby for it in parliament. You find that the people from
They
And
have
then
a
Mohammed
minister
Hussein
for
they have
Kampala.
MPs,
They
but
have
those
one
MPs
MP
cannot
for
lobby for
Kampala.
you even in government because they're out of government. Most of them are opposition. The only one is
That
Mohammed
is
Hussein.
you undermining the MPs.
The president
that
does not
Kampala
have
put up.
anyone.
Are you insinuating it's intentional
Whether
for the
you are in
president not
opposition,
to have
you
a
It may not be intentional, but may not be desirable for him. It does not give him a direct
No.
political result. President Museveni is a political person. It doesn't give him direct
Joel is
political
actually
result.
saying that the MPs that we put in there are not.
No, but Sabiti has told you they cannot, the leadership at KCC cannot meet with government over those same issues. So the president...
But the leadership of KCCA has, politically, has its own challenges.
Yes, but also the other challenge I want to mention, because we're out
Other
of time,
than
is the challenge of bureaucracy with KCC. Just imagine, I think in 2016 they received some money to construct major roads in Kampala. And until 2023 they are not done.
Yes.
They appropriated after 4 years. 2020, that's when they gave out contracts. When they gave out contracts, wheeler dealers were angry. So they take you to PPDA, you waste a lot of time there. So you stalled. Actually, World Bank withheld some of the money. I think World Bank or the IMF withheld part of the money. But the other money had been collected from the African Development Bank. So those challenges, coupled with the challenge of deepening democracy, because the president is also a human being. He has to invest where he is recouping. That may explain why after 2011, where he had a margin of 3,000 votes, he had to invest in Kampala. After that, the man has seriously abandoned. And that's a very serious policy bias on his side.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I don't know what you definitely think out there who is watching us of the infrastructure situation in the city. Go to our socials at NBS TV on Twitter, NBS Television on Facebook, on X, and at NBS TV on X. Yeah, we moved away from Twitter. I'm living in the press. And NBS Television on Facebook and X Media Services on YouTube. You can get me at Mildred Tohaise. We unfortunately need to bring this to a close. Thank you very much, Nelson. No, I'll start from Sheila. Thank you very much, Sheila Kamara, for sparing time. Thank you very much, Joel, for giving us your time.
The name with
Yeah, with the gentleman, yeah.
With the money,
yeah.
he says
Thank you,
political
Joseph
bias.
Sabiti. I only wanted to end with Kapo asking him, does he have any plan that he would want us to know of? As of today.
2026.
As of today.
As of today, tell
Yes.
us.
As of today.
I remain an employee of President Museveni. I support him and I like his ideas of patriotism, socio-economic
I
transformation.
asked your program, not mine, your yours.
Okay, we will do that another time.
Let's take a break. Thank you for joining us. Have a good day.